Rafael stood outside the cafe, one hand on the door handle, the other trying to smooth down a shirt that had suddenly become far too important. Inside, somewhere between the clatter of cups and the low hum of conversation, was the woman he'd come to meet. Just a first date, he told himself. Just a coffee. Nothing dramatic. And yet his stomach had other ideas. He looked at his reflection in the glass for a second longer than he wanted to. Not because he was vain, but because he knew what was about to happen. Before he sat down, before he had time to explain anything, before he could even prove he was the kind of man who remembered people's names and listened properly, she would already be forming an opinion. And if that sounds unfair, well, welcome to human beings. We do it all the time. A handshake, a glance, the way someone says hello, the speed of their smile, the tone they use when they ask how you're going. In just a few seconds, the brain starts building a story. Not because it's rude, but because it's efficient. It's trying to answer two ancient questions as quickly as possible. Can I trust this person? Do I respect this person? That's the strange power of first impressions. They're not just based on facts. They're based on shortcuts. Our brains take in a flood of tiny details and, almost instantly, decide whether someone feels warm, competent, confident, awkward, unsure, open, or guarded. And once that first judgment lands, it can be surprisingly hard to shake. Rafael knew this, which was part of what made him nervous. He wasn't worried about saying the wrong thing by accident. He was worried about being misunderstood before he'd even had the chance to speak properly. He wasn't trying to impress anyone by pretending to be perfect. He just wanted a fair shot. And that's where things get really interesting, because sometimes people don't judge the whole person at all. They judge one trait and let it spread everywhere else. A confident voice makes someone seem smarter. A warm smile makes them seem more trustworthy. A polished appearance can make ordinary words feel more convincing. That's the halo effect in action, and it's one of the reasons first impressions can be so powerful. So if you've ever walked into a room and felt instantly sized up, you're not imagining it. The question is, what exactly are people noticing in those first 7 seconds? And what can you do about it without becoming fake? Rafael sat there for a moment, staring at the glass doors of the cafe like they were the entrance to a courtroom. He'd been told the meeting was casual, but that didn't calm him down much. Whether it was a job interview, a first date, or even meeting someone new through a friend, he had the same thought every time. By the time he says hello, have they already decided who he is? And the uncomfortable answer is yes, probably. That's the strange part about human behavior. We like to believe we're thoughtful, fair, and open-minded, but the brain is constantly making tiny decisions in the background. It's scanning posture, facial expression, tone of voice, the speed of a handshake, the way someone holds eye contact, even whether they seem relaxed or tense. All of that gets turned into a quick impression, almost before the other person has had time to sit down. Rafael leaned back and remembered an old manager he once had. Great smile, warm voice, always remembered people's names. Everyone trusted him instantly, not because he said, "Trust me," but because everything about him seemed to line up. That's the halo effect in action. When one positive trait stands out, the brain starts assuming other good traits are there too. If someone seems confident, we may assume they're competent. If they look calm, we may assume they're reliable. It's not always logical, but it is very human. Of course, the same thing can work in reverse. One awkward moment, one distracted glance at your phone, one mumbled answer, and suddenly someone may decide you're disinterested, insecure, or unprepared. Fair? Not always. Realistic? Absolutely. What makes this even more fascinating is that people are usually asking themselves two silent questions without even realizing it. Can I trust this person? Do I respect this person? That's the filter. If the answer to trust is no, they pull away. If the answer to respect is no, they stop paying attention. And in those first few seconds, your body language and tone often answer before your words do. Rafael looked down at his hands, then straightened his shoulders. Not to fake confidence, but to settle into it. Because that's the real lesson here. First impressions aren't about becoming someone else. They're about making sure the real you get seen clearly, without your nerves doing all the talking. And once you understand that, The next question becomes even more interesting. What exactly are people noticing in those first 7 seconds? And how much control do we actually have over it? So when Rafael finally sat back and thought about everything he'd learned, the whole thing felt a bit humbling. Not because people are shallow, exactly, but because the brain is incredibly fast and sometimes far too confident for its own good. In those first few seconds, we're not really studying someone like a scientist. We're scanning for safety, warmth, competence, confidence. We're asking, almost without realizing it, can I trust this person? And do I respect this person? And before we even know it, those questions start shaping the whole conversation. That's why a simple shift in the way you show up can make such a difference. Not because you need to become louder, slicker, or more polished than you really are. Just clearer, calmer, more present, a steady voice, open posture, eye contact that feels natural, not forced. The sort of thing that says, I'm here, I'm paying attention, and I'm comfortable being myself. People feel that. They may not be able to explain it, but they feel it. Raphael realized he had spent too long worrying about saying the perfect thing, when in reality, most people were forming their first impression before the perfect thing even had a chance to land. And oddly enough, that was freeing, because if the first 7 seconds matter this much, then you don't need a flawless speech. You need a grounded beginning, a decent handshake, a genuine smile, a voice that isn't apologizing for existing. And maybe that's the real lesson here. First impressions are powerful, but they're not a life sentence. They're a starting point, a quick sketch, not the finished portrait. We all do it. We all judge fast, but we also have the ability to slow down, notice more, and let people reveal who they really are. So the next time you walk into a room, into a meeting, or across a cafe table, remember, you don't have to perform. You just have to arrive well. Show up with confidence, speak with clarity, and let your authenticity do the heavy lifting. That's often what people remember most. If this made you think about your own first impressions, give the video a like. And I'm curious, what's the biggest fear you have when meeting new people? Drop it in the comments. If you enjoy exploring the hidden science behind everyday behavior, subscribe so you don't miss the next one.